All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Town Hall. We are here tonight for a public hearing on the town's fiscal year 25-26 budget. We're joined by the school committee. First order of business, as always, is pledge of allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. All right, we're now going to dive right into the purpose of tonight's meeting. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Town Manager Jim Maney for a presentation on the fiscal year 25-26 town budget. Jim, go ahead.
Could we do roll call first?
Oh, yep.
Council President McEntee?
Here.
Council Vice President Marin?
Here.
Council Member Bergner? Here. Council Member Alley?
Here.
Council Member Wedgemont?
Here.
All town council members are present.
Thank you.
School Committee Chair Vetter? School Committee Member Brousseau? Here. School Committee Member Massananti?
Here.
School Committee Member Lander?
Here.
It is noted that School Committee members Restivo, Whitford, and Shear are absent.
All right, now that the roll is taken, Jim Maney, take it away.
Thank you, Council President. This evening we have a 41-page document that Brian Sylvia, our Director of Finance, will go over. I assure you it will go fairly quick. And I'm going to handle the first 7.5 pages, and then I'll turn it over to Brian so we can interpret most of this. So let's start on page 3 and go over why we're here tonight. Tonight is the public hearings on the budget, and there are 2 public hearings required to be conducted on the preliminary budget prior to April 18th. Tonight is the first meeting. I'll go over the date for the second one shortly. The final action on the budget by the Town Council shall occur on or before May 1st of each year, upon which time the Town Council considers any petitions received and gives final approval to the final budget by a majority vote of all members of the Town Council. So we'll go to page 4. Let's go over the dates. So April 2025, this is the budget calendar that's remaining. So tonight is Tuesday the 15th, public hearing number 1. Thursday is public hearing number 2. So Thursday the 17th, same time, 7 p.m. here at Town Hall. On April 21st, which is a Monday, there is a 4 p.m. deadline to submit petitions for revisions to the preliminary budget, which would require 25 signatures. On Monday the 28th, which happens to be a Town Council meeting, the consideration of petitions in adoption of the final operations budget will be during the regular session. Let's go to May. On Monday the 12th, 4 p.m. deadline for submissions of final petitions for a possible referendum. 200 signatures would be required. On May 16th, a Friday, the deadline for petition signatures would have to be verified by the Board of Canvassers. Let's go to June of 25. Tuesday the 10th. If there's a possible budget referendum, it would be on the Tuesday following the first Saturday in June. And Friday the 13th, the town assessor sets the tax rate for the fiscal year 25-26 operating budget. Let's look at some of the highlights on page 5. Personnel costs, a summary of changes. You'll see the 4 unions that the town negotiates with and the non-union personnel, which are about 35 or 40 personnel in non-union. But the IBPO is currently, we've budgeted 2%, but it's currently under negotiations. We don't anticipate to settle that prior to July 1st or right around July 1st. The IAFF is in year 2. That's our South Kingstown EMS. They have a 2% cost of living increase. Council 94 personnel, year 2 as well, a 2% increase. South Kingston MEA, NEA personnel, Year 2, a 3% increase, and the non-union personnel would also be a 3% increase. So let me go over those numbers, why they not really appear to be everything that is shown. The IAFF gets retention pay is built in there to retain our employees. There was high turnover, and that was built into their contract. Council 94 and MEA have skill-based incentives that they can work towards to increase their salary, as well as retention pay. The non-union personnel does not have retention pay, but does have skill-based incentives. Let's go over the proposed position changes, full-time employees. We've held the full-time employees to a net of 2 this year. The first one is a parks maintenance technician, which is Council 94 Parks Maintenance. $62.1 thousand in wages, $34.4 in benefits, a total of $96,600. 2 paramedic positions. Combined, both positions have wages of $134,500, $49,000 in benefits, which includes pension, health care, and so forth, a total of $183,000. We're opening a new EMS station next year at this time, and we are going to need a total of 8 EMS personnel to man that station. We have 2 that we budgeted last year, 2 this year, and we're hoping just to hire 4 for next year. That would be fully staffed. That's why it's important to have those 2 FTEs in the budget, as well as every FTE in EMS also cuts down on the overtime. So it's not quite net, but it's pretty close. There was a consolidation of police civilian staff, which resulted in a minus FTE. So we eliminated 2 personnel not eliminated, they retired, and we changed the job description at the police department. The records clerk and the office clerk position were eliminated, and the new position is a public safety data technology technician. I will emphasize there were many more FTEs in our budget. I think at least 6 more. But due to this was going to be a tough year because of debt service, that we eliminated those from our budget. So there was a net savings of several $100,000, correct, Brian? About $700,000? Yes. Let's go to page 6. These are the budget highlights, high-level budget highlights. So the fiscal year 25-26 proposed budget summary. And we'll go over the increase and the percent change from last year. So the school fund, $63,262,000. It was an increase of $803,000 from last year, of a net change of 1.29%. So the $803,000 consists of this. $608,000 was taken as a one-time deal from the Health Care Management Fund and transferred to the schools. We got confirmation from RIDE and the Auditor General that $608,000 transfer to the schools would not raise the maintenance of effort for future years. Let's look at the town general fund, $33,900,000. The increase was $1.2 million of a 3.68 change from last year. There were many contractual obligations, and also because of the debt service, that's where you saw, that was the economic driver for the increase for the town. Let's look specifically at the debt service fund, line 3. $3.5 million of debt compared to last year of $1.7 million in debt, so it makes a 97% increase. That is specifically because of the debt service of building in the new high school. The proposed tax transfer to the schools is $55,994,000. That was an increase of $0 from tax levy from last year in prior years. So the percent change is 0.00. The proposed property tax levy, next line, is $78,987,000. That's an increase of $2.320 million change from last year, which is a percent of 3.03%. The tax rate, next line, is 1105 currently. Due to the increase in valuations, it would go down to $9 per thousand on each household, which is a percent change of 18.55% when you compare the 1105 to the 9. What's that?
It's all relative because it's apples, you're talking about apples and
Right.
oranges. It's a reduction because it was 1144, but it's not really an 18%
Right, it's a reduction in the
decrease.
tax rate, but if we compare the $11, Brian has the numbers that we've
Right.
put out to the public in years past. So, Brian, do you know that number compared, when we compare the $11 figure?
I'm looking it up.
But anyway, the estimated net assessed value of, because of this recent reval, which is required by state law, is $8.754 billion. It went up $1.8 billion, which is a 26% increase on the estimated net assessed values. So Brian, while you're looking at it, we need that $11 figure.
What was the question?
Councilmember Bergner, the $11.05 tax rate,
Yeah. So it's from March 15th. No, it would have been.
he has it on a future slide, he'll
Yep,
go over that.
okay.
So if we look at page 7, the estimated net assessed values, so once again, this past 3-year period, which we're right towards the end of a reval, the end of calculating a reval, the taxable land and buildings for 24-25 was $6.854 billion. It went up to $8.656 billion for 25-26. The net change of $1.8 billion, the net change was 26.28%. The tangible property went from $90,517,000 to $97,753,000, with a net change of $7,235,000, which is a 7.99 increase. So the total taxable property is once again $6.945 billion for 24-25, increased to $8.754 billion in 25-26, $1.808 billion increase in this reval period for the average of 26.04%. Page 8, I'll go over the top 2 lines and then I'll turn it over to Brian. I think it's important to show where our money goes. These are all figures we know, but it's important just to go over them again. So if you look at the total property taxes required, the town budget, the tax levy is $21,647,000. For the schools, it's $57,481,000. The total is $79,129,000. That is the total property taxes required to run the town and the school system. The allocation of the tax levy for the town, it's 27.36% of every tax dollar goes to the town, and for the schools, it's 72.64% goes to the school department. So Brian, I'll turn that over from line 3 down to you.
Thank you, Jim. So I was just going to break down first that, how we got to those percentages and those first few numbers. So the school number, obviously the school allocation of the tax transfer is that $55.9 million, and you're seeing the $57,481 on the top line under schools. How we arrive at that is the local appropriation of the $55.9 million, and then the total debt service cost for education is $2.3 million. We're anticipating revenue from state aid of $175,000. We're using the use of fund balance from the debt service fund of $682,000. So the total debt impacted by the levy is $1,486,000. That added to the tax transfer of the $55,994 is how you arrive at the $57,481,000. And then that divided by the total amount, the $79,129, is how you arrive at the percents that are listed there. 27.36 to the town, as Jim mentioned, and 72.64 for the school. The next line down, the other tax revenue, just to go over what that's made up of, that $1.1 million number, that is prior year taxes. So any taxes that are collected beyond the current year, that is budgeted at $400,000. Interest on taxes collected on delinquent payments, $348,250. And payment in lieu of taxes of $430,000, again totaling up to that $1.1 million. If you just going down to the bottom where you get to the summary, and that's how you arrive at the total amounts. Basically, if you take the current year budget, that's $77,950,000, and the other tax revenue, that's how you arrive at the total tax required, that's $79,129,000. So that is the makeup of how we arrive at the taxes needed to balance the budget. Yes.
So, as I was approached by Councilman Moran and was reminded that I'm the new kid, help me, where does that $6 million difference come from in terms of what we're saying the school fund is required of the $63 million, and then the amount given is the $57 million, was it? 57.8 million?
What, 63, I'm sorry, I don't know what 60.
So on page 6, the school fund states that we have 63,
Oh.
the proposed budget.
Yes.
And then so now you're with me? Okay.
So the balance of the school budget, which the schools could probably speak to better than I'll let Ryan handle that.
It's our other revenue sources, so state aid, Medicaid reimbursements, local sources as well, tuition, things of that nature. That's what makes up the difference.
Got it.
So moving along to page 9. Again,
Still learning.
this starts at the top with the percent breakdown, and this then works its way down. You can see the allocation of the assessed value. So again, as Jim had noted, the assessed value at $8.6 billion is then parsed out between the town and school and the levy requirement of each, and that then works into the rate required for each. So you're looking at a rate to support the town operations of $2.46, which is a reduction of 50 cents from the current rate, and a rate for the schools of $6.54, which is a reduction of $1.55 from the current rate, for again, a reduction overall of $2.05. Overall, the levy change, as noted previously, is just over $2.2 million, about $1 million going to the town and $1.2 to the schools, mainly associated with the debt service once again. And on the next page, this takes us through the levy, and actually I do have the notes as Councilwoman had asked. I think I have it on this. Nope, okay, I had it on the last page. So if you were asking again if we weren't going through reval, is that essentially what the, okay. So if we, I have this just on my notes, actually. Yeah. So if we weren't going through a reval right now, if we assumed growth, we normally have growth between 45 million. So if we assume minimal growth, 40 million, our rate right now would be going up to $11.32. Yep. And conversely, if we weren't financing year one of the bands this year, our rate would have gone down to, or we could have supported the budget with a rate of $8.87, which would be a levy increase of 1.56. On this slide, you'll see the breakdown of the tax revenue, just showing a different way. So you'll see the assessed value in the first column, that $8.7 billion. The current levy is $78.9 million. We're showing a proposed increase of $2.3 million for the levy increase on the next line over of 3.03. We're assuming abatements and overlay of $1,036,000, which is how we arrive at the $77,950,000 for the budgeted tax revenue for the current year. That allowance for abatements and overlay, that represents we're showing a collection rate of 98.7%. And the impact of 1 cent on the levy would be $78,748. Also, worth noting on the slide, again, we've kind of mentioned this previously, but again, with the bands make up about 51.5% of our levy increase. And if we had, the town has the ability under state law to go up to a 4% cap. Should the town elect to do that, that would result in a rate of $9.08, and the town has the ability to raise an additional $683,850. I have a whole slide on that. Okay. On the next slide, this is a summary over the last 10 years. So you'll see, just looking at an average over the last 5 years, you'll see over the last 5 years, the town allocation in terms of the rate has gone up 2.31% to 27.36, and conversely, the school percentage has gone down 2.31% to 72.64%. The overall rate has gone down $5, or is proposed to go down $5.45 from $14.45 to $9. Assessed value is really something, when you look at that. I mean, it's gone up $3.5 billion in 5 years. That increase represents 66% of the actual assessed values 5 years ago in FY22. Just the increase over the last 5 years. It's really jumped. Going along to the final net, the net levy, that's gone up $4.9 million in the last 5 years, so we're averaging about just under $1 million a year increase on the levy. And the average levy increase over the last 5 years is an increase of 1.4%.
Can I ask a question? So this is a curiosity question that literally just popped into my head. So over the next year, 2 years, as we start to see housing aid come back to us for capital improvement projects, and or when we go out to, and we start with the construction for the new high school, we're doing like some early bid packages, and we'll see some projects play out earlier than others, and the reimbursements might come in sooner than 5 years from now. When that housing aid comes back to the town, I'm under the assumption that all housing aid that comes back for our school buildings will be utilized to pay down debt service related to the bond, correct?
Until I'm told otherwise, right now, all state aid, school housing aid goes into the debt service fund and goes towards applying against the education debt service payments.
So if that happens, does that lessen the burden that we're calculating right now? Does that change these numbers at all, even if it's like by a half a cent?
It will.
So something that, so when we look at it in like the tax rate that we're proposing right now as of this moment in time, maybe a year from now that might be different, and it could impact the actual taxes that the community's paying.
Right now, we're anticipating in next year's budget housing aid of $175,000. If we get projects in and we get more of that, that's yes, less of a reliance on the transfer from the general fund to the debt service fund to fund these obligations. So,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to follow up on that question since we're on the topic here. I know that we clarified previously that the capital improvement expenditures that are in the current year's budget, fiscal year 24-25, are those projects that were identified in RIDE, improvements made to other schools, not the high school, and we expect reimbursement from those within one fiscal year of this current fiscal year ending. Is that $175,000 all that we expect in reimbursement? Can you clarify that?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the housing aid form that I submitted last year. I think we budgeted for $571,000 in projects. So $175,000 is 35% of $500,000. So that's
about right?
That's right about the right number.
Okay.
Yep.
And this budget already contemplates that $175,000 to offset debt service?
That's correct.
Got it.
On the next slide, we're going to go through the changes that were enacted as part of the preliminary budget adoption. So under the town manager proposed, you'll see the initial proposed budget. I'm sorry, this is on page 12. I moved to the next page. The initial town manager proposed budget was an amount of $34,086,713. The following changes were enacted as part through the preliminary budget adoption process. Current year taxes were reduced by just under $338,000. EMS billing revenue increased by $85,000. The interfund computer services revenue was reduced by $31,847. School field maintenance was reduced by $304. We now have a healthcare management fund transfer into the general fund of $76,500. And the use of designated fund balance has increased by $70,512. Overall, the budget is reducing by $138,077 to a new total of $33,948,636. That's on the revenue side. I have other slides for the expense side, but yes.
Just remind me, Brian, the Healthcare Management Fund transfer, was that the West Bay Collaborative that we talked about
That's
on the
correct.
town side?
The town side had approximately 81,000 in it, and we left about 5,000 in it to cover the
Audits.
the OPEB valuation for the upcoming year. That's
Thank you.
why you're seeing 76.5 there. The next slide is the changes enacted on the expenditure side of the general fund budget. The first grouping is all related to the elimination of 2 new non-union positions within the town manager's office. And then the last 2 is an increase of 16,000 each within finance and tax assessor, offsetting the interfund revenue from the school department. And finally, in the next 2 slides is just showing the other allocations that were adopted as part of the preliminary budget. And this is the enacted allocations for human services and outside agencies on this slide, and then on page 15 is the total. No change on those totals. It was $150,000 set in miscellaneous, and then the council took action to allocate those funds as necessary. The next slide is a updated projected year end for the current fiscal year. At the last time we did this, which was as part of the town manager's proposed budget, which was released on March 1st, we were showing a projected surplus of about 1.2 million. We're showing a little north of that now at 1.5 million. One big piece of that is we now have all contracts settled and all retro paid, and I know where we're going to land on that. We had some contracts outstanding, and not knowing how the retro would land, that was a big part of it. I think it's safe to say we're through the winter months, so we have some savings there. So we're starting to release some of the contingencies that we planned for at this point. So most of the change you're seeing here, the 300,000, is on the expenditure side of the budget. There are some changes on the revenue side. The revenue side really is showing about the same amount, not much of a change, but we took down investment income. And I did not have in the projection as part of the town manager's budget, the transfer from the employee settlement, I forgot the name of the fund, I believe it's the settlement, the employee settlement fund that we're going to transfer. I believe we'll get about $250,000 in that fund for the EMS settlement. So that is now reflecting that, which we'll get that probably before the council. If not sooner, then certainly as part of the year-end transfers, that can be part of that. But that is reflecting here, so that's why you're seeing the operating transfers increasing by an additional $250,000 on this scenario. We're reflecting that transfer in, even though we haven't taken that action yet. And we are showing investment income going down by basically the corresponding amount. Okay, next slide. This is the all funds budget summary. So all funds that the town currently budgets have a total of $111,582,000, which is showing an increase of 4.02%. Again, as part of this, it's a running theme, but of all these funds and of all these increases, the debt service fund increase represents about 40% of this increase. That is the driving force on this budget cycle. Next slide is a summary of the general fund. General fund overall is going up $1.2 million, or 3.68%. It's worth noting that the adopted budget for the current fiscal year, FY 24-25, was going up 6.23% over FY 24. So this has been other than the debt service, a very lean budget. We've tried to come in lean, as the town manager has spoken to, that understanding that the obligations of the town. So this has been a very lean budget, and we're trying to keep it that way. The biggest driver here is, again, on the non-departmental. The town is not, you're seeing a decrease of just under 20%, and that is mainly related to, in the current year budget, we had funds set aside for contractual obligations, as we had 3 contracts open, as well as we had funds set aside for the OPEB trust, which, given our funded status, we had eliminated that from the current year, the next year's budget. Same information. This is the general fund, just shown a different way. So this is a summary by type. So you're seeing the wages going up 5%, benefits 4.93, services 2.05, capital outlay 0.6%, commodities going down for, again, the overall increase of 3.68%. I apologize. I'm actually going to flip back. There was one thing I wanted to cover that I think we should cover that I did not touch on. I'm going to go back to 16. Is it 16? Oh, I'm sorry, it was, I had it on my notes as part of the transfers. So within the operating budget, the preliminary budget that was adopted by the council, we had received from the trust an estimation of healthcare benefits going up between 5% and 8%. And the town had budgeted as part of through the budget process, an increase of 6.5%. We have, since the preliminary adoption, received notification that the rates will be going up 8.74%. Yeah. We can sustain this, though, because we do have a credit with the trust. So each year after you finish the fiscal year, if you have a credit, once everything is worked out, you can apply that credit versus OPEB, or you can apply it as a credit for the upcoming fiscal year. So the town has a credit currently of about $80,000 of the 140, and the rate currently at $9, obviously you never land right on a rate. We wanted to set the collection rate at 98.75%, so we actually have about $49,000 in there. So that, coupled with the $80,000, we're now about $8,000 short from covering this healthcare increase. So this will be, as part of the budget adoption process, I'll be bringing an amendment before the council to allocate those funds, both on the revenue side, because we can offset this on the revenue side, and the allocation of the expenses. But I wanted to note that, as that will be coming before you at the 28th meeting.
All right, Brian, I want to slow that down so we can all understand this a little better.
Yeah.
Are you saying that we can increase the collection rate by a 0.1% to make up for this? Can you talk us through this?
Yeah, no, I had planned on having a collection rate of 98.75%. To get where we needed to get to balance the budget, we never land right on the dollar. So we had to get, again, to change the rate, it takes $78,000. Where we landed at $99, we were heavy by about $49,000. So we basically just increased the collection, or reduced the collection rate. To get where we needed to get at 98.75, we have that $49,000 sitting there. So if we take that revenue, the collection rate would go from 98.7 to 98.75, which was what we were intending. So
And
those funds.
that's actually a conservative rate,
Yes.
based on the history of how collections have been in South Kingstown?
It is, it's just that it being a reval year, the appeals are up, and it is a little bit lower than normal, but it being a reval year, we wanted to keep it a little lower.
It's best to be cautious in a reval year?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you.
Yep. On the revenue side, this is page 20, sorry, going back to that. So again, on the property taxes, what is making up the 79 million? That is current year tax revenue of 77.9 million, prior year tax revenue of 400,000, interest on taxes of 348,000, and payment in lieu of taxes or pilots for 430,000. You'll see, again, driver, it's a running theme, but the driver being the operating transfer out with an increase, and that's again associated with the debt service payment the transfer going to the debt service fund. And it was mentioned previously, but you are seeing a swing between departmental revenue and the operating transfers in. This was a request by our auditors. We had shown the funds that were contributed by side funds like the Guild and Rec Center coming in as miscellaneous revenue and department revenues previously. Our auditors have requested that that be changed to operating transfer in, and that's why you're seeing such a reduction in revenue on department revenues and an increase on the operating transfers in. Next slide is the fund balance. Nothing has changed here since we last spoke on this, but this again, currently our fund balance as part of the fiscal year 24 audit is $16,774,767, which represents 18.46% of our operating revenues for the current fiscal year. Now we're going to get into some of the side funds. You'll see the Peacedale office building. This is proposed for an increase of 2.49%. It's worth noting for this fund, again, that they are self-sustaining. They do not receive a transfer in from the general fund to support operations. And again, same goes for this is the expense side of the Peacedale office building. Again, an increase of 2.49%. On the next slide on page 24, senior services is actually showing a slight decrease of about $35 from the current fiscal year. And you're also seeing a slight reduction of $16,827 on the operating transfer in from the general fund. So that's going from $534,000 in the current year to $517,000 in the proposed fiscal year 26. And page 25 is the expenses for the senior services fund. Again, no change. Neighborhood Guild, similar to the PDOB, this is a self-sustaining fund. They do not receive a transfer in from the general fund to support operations. Overall, this fund is showing an increase of 8.23%. With the proposed, the proposed increase, it works out to just over $79,000. The bulk of that on the expense side is related to salary and benefits as well as capital outlay. The rec center on page 28 is showing an increase of 10%. This fund is showing an increase from the operating transfer in and an increase from the general fund from $410,000 in the current year to $438,000 in the upcoming fiscal year, FY 25-26. And on the next slide, on page 29, in terms of expenses, that predominantly the drivers here is both, again, personnel costs and capital outlay. Debt service. I'll say for probably the 20th time tonight that the driver here is the bond anticipation notes for year one of the high school project. So the overall, the operating transfer in is proposed for a $1.1 million increase. This is being offset, even though the debt service is going up by about $1.7 million, the transfer in is going up by $1.1 million, and the town is proposing the use of fund balance from the debt service fund of $682,000. And on the third line, on the revenue on the top, you'll see that state federal aid coming in, that's the $175,000. And overall, so the makeup of the expenses, so you got education aid education debt service for the upcoming year at $1.7 million. Town is a decrease, I'm sorry, these are increased numbers. The education debt service is increasing by $1.7 million. Town debt service in the upcoming year is going down by $37,000, and the guild is going down by $1,400. On the next slide, this is our current outstanding debt obligations of the town. You'll see in each of the years, we are trending down. So going from fiscal year 25 to 26, the Debt service was going down about 1.1 million. And it is steadily going down, not at the rate that we'll be taking on debt in the upcoming years, but that does help. We are showing debt, and as you can see along the top, within the town and on the school bond, the bond for 2015, fiscal year 26 represents the last year of payments on the 2015 bond. So we will be done with that bond after this fiscal year, and same goes for 2017 on the town side. That'll be the last year for fiscal year 27. So the obligations are reducing, but we have new debt coming online. This is going to be spoken to in greater detail at the next meeting, but we have this information, so I certainly wanted to bring the council up to date on this as well. So this is some information that will be coming up very soon on the bond anticipation notes, or BANs. So it is anticipated right now that the town will need, for the first year of construction, $61 million. That will be getting verified by the end of the week by Left Field. That's an earlier projection. I received that projection probably about 6 months ago at this point. So they are going to be giving me an updated projection on that by the end of the week. If that number changes, we'll adjust on that. But right now, we're based on this. So we are anticipating a bond anticipation notes of $61 million. The assumed rate at 3%. The projected interest for the year is $1.8 million. So the amount that would be due then is $62.8 million. Dates of interest coming up. Will be before the town council to authorize the notes on April 28th. We'll have a bond rating call with Moody's on May 5th. On May 30th, we're anticipating the rating results from Moody's. And then we'll have the competitive sale will be on June 11th. The last two dates will be changing. We've asked them to change the signing of the documents to June, I believe, 21st, which would then push out the funding of the bonds as well. So those last two dates will be changing, but that's what I have at this time. But those are some upcoming dates on the bond anticipation notes. And again, we'll be speaking to that in greater detail at the next meeting.
Brian,
Yes.
was the April 14th date set up by us? And that's why we're okay with it not being received yet?
That is.
Town receives draft preliminary official statement for review and update.
I did receive that. So
You did receive
that
it.
was received by the town's financial advisors, PFM. So we had to actually, do every year, the town has to do a continuing disclosure, which is basically just for the rating agencies to say, here's where we are financially. We just finished that. We updated that on March 27th, and now we have to actually update that again because that is the POS. So they've sent me that, PFM, our financial advisor, sent me that on the 14th. And I have, by the 21st, I have to get that updated again, but there's not much is going to be changing. I had it updated less than a month ago.
Great. Thank you for walking me through that.
Sure. So that, again, is where we are on the bands. We'll be more coming on that at the next meeting.
Brian,
Yes.
in this slide, you've got an assumed interest rate of 3.0%.
Yes.
As I recall, when we were talking about this before the bond issue vote, we were assuming a 3.5.
That's when we're assuming that for the actual bond issuance. So in 2028, when we actually issued the bonds, the bond anticipation notes, we were anticipating 3%. Yep. The next slide is the water fund on page 33. The water fund is, again, self-sustaining, similar to several of the other funds. It's an enterprise fund. This has a proposed increase of 7.36%. With, again, the bulk of this associated with both personnel costs related to the new contracts and capital outlay. On the next slide, page 35, is wastewater. Wastewater is showing a proposed increase of 4.1%. That is, again, similar to, well, both this one and the next one, solid waste, are enterprise funds. They are self-sustaining funds, and the driver on this fund is mainly personnel related to the new contracts, as well as some capital outlay. On solid waste, there's one thing I got to note on this, and I have to work this out. Usage fees. There's a few things happening there, and I have to fix that, which I found today. So usage fees is actually $2,670. The rest of this is the transfer that we'll be receiving from the town of Narragansett related to the sharing of the recycling coordinator. So I have to get the account was created and stuck into usage fees because I think it was associated with that. I have to pull that out. That shouldn't be noted as usage fees, but, so that, the driver on that usage fee is approximately $42,469 is actually the transfer from the town of Narragansett on the recycling coordinator. And that is also a driver on the wages and benefits as well, as that position is now, it's funded on the expense side full-time, and then we receive the revenue on the, to offset it on the revenue side. And this next slide on page 39 walks through the adopted changes of the school department budget, school department operating budget. So as part of the town manager's budget, proposed was $62,587,000. You're seeing now an increase of use of fund balance by $77,189,000. State aid was reduced by $10,690, and that operating transfer in from the healthcare management fund of $608,000 for a total change of $674,000 and a proposed new budget of $63,262,304. And that's the summary of the changes through the preliminary adopted budget. And on the operating budget itself, as noted previously, school department is showing a proposed increase of 1.29% to $63.2 million, which coincides with, again, on the next slide, page 41, on the expense side. And that is all.
All right, thank you, Brian. All right, any questions from council members or school committee members? We'll start with the council.
Yeah, just give me a second.
I got a few, oh, you got some? Go ahead.
I don't have any real specific questions about figures, but I just had a question about, I just had a question about the human service allocations, if we could maybe discuss those. The one thing that I just wanted to discuss was, I think we have, let's see, 15,000 to the Newport Boys and Girls Club, and at the same time, we have a youth center opening in Peacedale, and also the Newport Boys and Girls Club did not fully utilize the money that we sent to them last year. And so I'm wondering if you guys might consider reallocating that 15,000 to our own youth center.
So I feel like if Paula Whitford were here, she would tell you the many, many benefits of the Boys and Girls Club provide to our underserved youth that participate in summer camp. It's a summer camp program for the underserved, I guess. That's the way I understand it. Yes. And so I wouldn't want to do that. The youth center, I understand it's a great project. It has gotten hundreds of thousands of dollars from the town and the state, and it's rolling along. And I don't want to change that, to take it away from kids going to summer camp.
Right, I guess I just, I think in the past, I don't recall what it was, but didn't they have some monies left over this year?
Yes. So whatever we allocated to them, they didn't use all of it, and so they didn't take it. So they only asked to be replenished to that level. So maybe they had 2,500 left over and they asked for only 17,500. Don't quote me on the numbers, because.
Right, I think that's about what it was. I just wanted to bring it up, so I don't feel particularly one way or the other, but I wasn't here when that presentation was made, so it did
you
not
were away.
impact. I think it was like before I was on the council, wasn't it, a few years ago? There was a really excellent,
Oh, yeah, that was in 2020.
so that's, right.
That's like 5 years ago.
But it was impactful.
Just to clarify, because it's under the Newport Boys and Girls Club umbrella, it serves South Kingstown kids. So just so that we're clear, there is no South Kingstown Boys and Girls Club. Newport hosts our children, which is what that money goes to, if that helps.
Okay.
I think it's, you want to jump in on that?
I just wanted to ask, the last time we spoke about this, wasn't it 9 South Kingstown residents were in this program?
We can certainly review the application.
I'm just asking that
before the
question. If nobody
next
knows,
meeting. I don't know the answer to that.
So I think it's higher than 9, but I think that if you think about, it could be 12, right? And so $1,000 a child for summer camp is a deal, because you can't, it's hundreds of dollars to go to even day camp. So it's a great deal, and it's a great opportunity for kids to get out and swim and do lots of different things and learn, and so.
I mean, I think it's certainly worth considering. I'm not entirely sure as to whether they're going to serve the same, persons that the Newport Youth Center would serve. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a competing interest with one another, but I definitely have a preference of funding local nonprofits as opposed to those out of town. They both appear as if they're going to provide, services, perhaps maybe similar services to SK students, and I think it just makes sense naturally to want to provide funding to a local agency. I do want to be weary of the fact that we're looking at nonprofits and agencies who filed applications with the town seeking monies. I don't believe the new youth center or the Johnny Cake has applied for funds. I don't believe it was even in existence at that time. Am I correct that they did not apply for funds?
Well, they have
Johnny-
funds, but it's that, the 30,000 is for food.
Right.
So I could speak for a long time on the benefits of summer camp for kids. If you don't want me to talk about it, but trust me, it's being able as a child to be able to attend summer camp and interact in a way that's not a school setting and learn skills, learn to grow as a leader and as an individual. It's huge. And I don't want people to think that it's not benefiting our own people, because it is benefiting those families. And it's an apple and an orange. Again, it's a totally different thing. And so I don't know where.
No decisions will be made tonight with respect to that. It's certainly a good discussion topic. I think going forward, we should definitely be attentive to the services the new youth center provides, and maybe give them, potential monies in the future. I just don't think it's the best move from a council perspective to fund a certain group who hasn't made an application of monies. But that's to be determined at the end of April. I have some questions about sort of the budget. If anyone does not have, I just want to dive right in here. You got some?
I just wanted to pick up where Brian left off, and I think it's actually more a question for the superintendent with respect to the school department's budget. The figure given for federal aid struck me as low, and it may be just how things are categorized, or maybe Ryan. Let me get back to it. No, it's not your fault.
Page 40?
Yes. On page 40, the federal aid to education for 25-26 is 525, and that just struck me as low.
That's just specifically the Medicaid reimbursements. That's all that piece is.
Okay.
Yep. So
Where does-
our IDEA allocation, our Title I, II, and IV allocations, those are separate funds, not in the general fund.
Okay. All right. The next question, now that I know why it's not under that line item, do you have any indication that those funds are at risk from the federal government pulling back?
Do you want to take it?
I mean,
It's a
it's
great
a question we
It's a-
may have
yeah,
to
it's a great
face.
question.
It might rain tomorrow, it might not. I mean,
Yeah, well,
We've received no indication yet of any funding source or whether they're going to, some of the talk mainly has been, what if they go to block grants or things that way? That's been the discussion, not in terms of percentage up or down.
how you might get it as opposed to whether or not you would get it.
That's been
Okay. Thank you.
at least lately, that's been the discussion.
Okay.
Good.
May I ask a question? Page 16, Brian, you talk about projected year-end results is $1.5 million. See that little number in the bottom? So that is our projected surplus, but we've already allocated that money. It's in next year's budget. Some of it's going to the, can you tell me where?
Yeah.
That's the question. Sorry.
So, and that's going to be decided really after, we won't know this number until we're halfway through the next fiscal year. So, in essence, this is projection solely at this point. But, yes, as part of the, just so I can grab that, okay, so the use of fund balance on page 20, we're proposing right now the use of fund balance next year of $1,620,000, whereas we'd be putting back in about $1.5 million this year.
Hold on one sec, let me get to that page. Well, fund balance, we're using 1.6 and we're only putting in theory, 1.5 back.
Correct.
Okay. I just don't want people to think that we are stockpiling. And
Absolutely.
in some of that fund balance, that 1.6, some of that's going to the debt service?
That's a separate fund balance. The
Separate?
debt service fund has its own fund balance, just over $2 million. This is the fund balance of the undesignated fund balance of the town, the $16.7 million.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in on some similar questions there. So the net effect of the projected surplus and the fund balance transfers is a reduction in the unassigned fund balance of about $100,000.
Give or take, yes.
And that projected surplus of 1.5 million, does that already account for the contingencies, the labor contingencies? I know you talked about it a little bit at that slide. Can you walk through that a little slower for us?
Sure. So I have pulled back some of the contingencies. When the budget was released, the town manager's budget was released on March 1st. We, obviously, on March 1st, we hadn't closed out February yet, so that was really 6 months through the year. So it was a conservative estimate, which I believe I stated. The 1.2 million was conservative. We still had contracts to settle, so we were still at that point. We could have some winter storms, a lot of things. So we certainly have, now we know where we're landing on the labor contracts. All contracts have been settled, all retro has been paid, contracts have been implemented. I can use that as a projection going forward. Here's the weekly payrolls, project that out. Much easier system now that the contracts are settled. So this is a clearer picture, I think, where we're going to be landing.
All right, so all of that is accounted for here.
Yes.
Great. All right, I got a few other questions. Kind of want to dovetail on what Mike Marin was asking. On slide 20, looks like there's state and federal aid of about 6.6 million in this budget. Can you identify the amount that's federal aid and sort of give us a breakdown of what that federal aid is and the amounts?
It's very little. So we get a payment in lieu of taxes from federal aid of $8,000, and that's really it.
That's the only federal aid in this, on the
Yes.
town's portion of the budget.
Yes. We have a state grant operating from the town, we're getting from the state. I don't know the origins of that. That might be federal funds coming from the state, but Specifically from the federal government, we have a payment in lieu of taxes of $8,000 in this budget.
All right, and that's just the municipal portion of the budget?
Yes.
All right, I want to touch on the school side, federal aid. I know you've mentioned about $525,000, which relates to Medicaid reimbursement. Can you talk about all of the federal aid that's in the school department's budget?
Sure.
Sort of break it down for us and the amounts related to each type?
Sure, I'll just go line by line. So we get Title I funds. We budgeted $450,000 for next year, which is a $20,000 decrease from this current year. Our Title II budgeted amount for next year is $125,000, which is down about $56,000 from this year. Our Title III allocation, we're expecting about $7,000 for next year, which is roughly the same, down $636 from this year. Our Title IV budget for next year is $130,000, which is about a $22,000 decrease from this year. Our IDEA allocation, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act funds, Part B, $950,000 is our budget for next year, which is a decrease of about $93,000. And then our IDEA Part B preschool allocation, our budget is $28,000 for next year. We also receive Perkins federal aid for construction, career and technical education, sorry, I always conflate those, for $70,000. That's about a $2,000 increase we're expecting for next year. And then I have just a general bucket for state grants. I know it's not federal, I'm just going through each line. Of about $100,000 of that allocation, that's primarily what they call CTE categorical aid, and that is always subject to the General Assembly's final budget. So, and then $10,000 for other grants. So total amount budgeted is $1.8 million. Of that, if you take out 180, we're looking at $1.7 million from the federal government, roughly.
And in addition to that, you got the Medicaid reimbursement of $525,000?
Add that on top, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Mike Barron asked the question, I just want to re-ask it with respect to any of these amounts here. Are any of these amounts at risk?
At this moment in time, doesn't seem that way. We're not sure.
Okay.
From your lips to God's ear.
Yeah. Don't quote me.
All right, I do have another question. It's not on a slide here, but it's
Sure.
come up in a previous presentation we talked about. One thing I want to get clarity on is, I know when we talked about transportation expense, there's these credits that are applied to the expense. There's no revenue line item for it, and those credits are received from the state.
Correct.
So there is some form of state aid with respect to transportation. What
Correct.
is that amount?
Let me get it for you right now. For next year, it'll be $177,916.
Okay.
For the
Out
current,
of the $5 million.
What does that represent? What does that represent as a percentage of our total transportation expense?
oh boy. Let me just, I'll do a quick 2.8. I'm getting some help here. 177,916 divided by, we'll call it 5.8 million. 3%, 2.83%.
All right.
Thank you for that.
And I understand that we have an expense for out-of-district transportation of about $1.2 million in the current year's budget.
Correct.
Now, that expense, is that included in out-of-district expenses or transportation expense in our budget?
Good question.
Could you rephrase your question? What do you mean?
So we have, when we review your budget and your presentation,
Yep.
I don't know, last month, whenever it was,
Yep.
we looked at out-of-district expense, we also looked at transportation expense. I'm asking you, where is the out-of-district transportation expense? What line item is that
great.
included in?
Great question, sorry. Yep. It's buried in the transportation object code. So that 5.8 million or whatever it is that we have, it's in there. It's in that line item. It's not broken out separately.
Okay, and that 3% in aid, 3%, which is of the total transportation, which includes the out-of-district, we only get credits or aid for transporting our public school students, is that right?
No, it offsets all of our transportation expense, which includes the private school students.
Okay. So the aid that we're getting also includes like a function of, total transportation expense, which includes out-of-district transportation.
Correct.
Okay. Understood.
Yep.
Thank you.
You got it.
Brian, I want to ask one more. Slide 7, just curious on this one. When I look at this, is it slide 7? It might be slide. The slide that breaks down the tax levy for commercial property versus residential property. Can you bring that slide up?
This one? Or-
Yeah, that's the one. Slide 10?
Yep.
It looks to me, when I look at this, that the increase in the assessed values, the residential properties are really getting hit on the increase in assessments. The commercial properties are not. They're actually getting the benefit of a reduced tax bill because the commercial properties are not increasing at the same rate as residential. Is that correct? Is that why we're seeing a decline in the levy from commercial?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have an idea of what the increase in assessment for commercial properties is?
The only thing I could say on that is I've spoken to the assessor, and Jim may know better than I, but I know she's planning on coming before the council, either the second meeting in April or in early May, to give a summary and give results of the revaluation. But right now, these are the numbers that I have from her and that we're working off of. But we will have more. I believe it was last week the appeals finished, and it is wrapping up, so we will have finalized numbers soon, but this is the current estimate we have.
All right. Is that something perhaps we could have by Thursday, or really just curious?
Yeah.
If not, we can flush it out at a later date.
I think your question's kind of interesting, Rory, because it is curious that the commercial property is down
Yeah.
when all we've heard for 5 years is the real estate market is hot, hot, hot. So it's a great observation. So I don't know if that's true. I mean, and I guess Wendy's going to have to explain it when she comes and visits.
Well, I'll talk to Wendy tomorrow and see if we can get an answer, and if so, we'll have her here Thursday.
Great.
Great.
All right. Any other questions up here? Any questions from school committee members? Go ahead.
So this is going to kind of be like a hypothetical based on the articles that everybody probably saw in the Independent on our equity audit. And I apologize, I haven't even talked with these guys about it. So my question comes in past meetings, we've been told that if something occurs over time and we need more money, we can come and ask for more, right? That's kind of a broad generalization of my ask here. So over the past 4 years, most people in our community around the schools know that we actually asked for the equity audit that we just got our results from, that Bill Seymour did some lovely articles about. His order was a little out of whack, where it would have been nice if he started with the one where we actually asked for the audit and got the results, so now we can make adjustments and changes. One of the biggest problems that we're faced with the 0% transfer year over year is we have to make hard choices, and we have to cut certain positions based on finances. My question, kind of roundabout, comes down to, in that equity audit, there are some roles that we are looking at, and unrelated, we're looking at needing to reduce due to financial constraints and or enrollment. My question comes in is, if we find through that equity audit that some of those roles that have been reduced are important for making sure we have more equitable educational opportunities in our schools, how do we go about coming back to the town and saying, look, we know we had to make some hard choices, but we have these particular roles that clearly we need in order to have more equitable education in our district going forward. What is the process for us to come and pull that trigger and say, we're going to need $150,000 more to fill these roles so we can meet our a certain population of our students' needs that we are clearly not meeting. Does that question make sense? Like, how do we pull that trigger to come back to you and say, we need something, we need help, and how do we make that ask?
I think that's more of a legal question. Am I correct there? There is a mechanism by which they can come back and ask for more monies, but there's a procedure by which they need to do that by?
I believe, just going off of memory from the town charter, the council can act on transferring budgeted funds from one fund to another or from one subgroup to another at any time through the fiscal year. But yeah, that's much more of a legal question. I know there are some cities and towns you can't do a transfer until the fourth quarter. I believe in South Kingston, the council could take action on that at any time through the year. They could transfer funds or amend the budget. But yes, definitely a legal question. I would reach out.
Go ahead.
If I can make a suggestion, one of the things about doing the equity report in the first place was find out what the scope of the problem is. Now that you've got the report, the next step is, okay, how do we deal with the issues that have been identified in the report? It seems to me you got to come up with, the school committee has to come up with a recommendation. These are the things that we think we need to do. This is what we think it's going to cost us, and we don't have the funds. You might also want to look around at what, I believe Westerly is either in the middle of one or did one. North Kingstown has their report done. I'm not sure about others, but see what the other folks are doing.
All right. Any other comments, school committee members? All right, this is a public hearing. We're going to open it up. Anyone in the audience who wishes to speak, I invite you to just come on up. We just ask that you introduce yourself. We're going to limit you to 5 minutes. If you have questions, we'll allow you to ask them and try to give you some clarity. Come on up.
Jim O'Neill, Wakefield. Don't know where to begin. 41 pages. Anyway, I'll make this short tonight. Brian, back on slide 6, page 6. If I could, through the president, ask Brian a question.
Go ahead, Jim.
Good. I'm just old school here. You know, I'm looking at the school fund, the new needs, 803,000. The town needs $1,203,000 for their operations. Of the debt service fund, is that $1,255,000 I thought was going to be in there from the bank anticipation note? Is that, where's that $1,225,000, which is probably lower now since you're using 3%?
You're speaking on the debt service fund?
Yeah.
Okay, so the debt service fund overall is increasing by 1.7 million. Of that 1.7 million, approximately 680,000 is being funded via a fund balance of the debt service fund, and the balance is being funded via a transfer from the general fund, which is about 1.1 million.
All right, so what does the state look at then when we consider the 4% levy? What numbers are we supposed to be looking at here?
The 3.03%. That is the levy increase that is proposed.
All right, so I think Mr. Marin brought it up to, so the 3.5% you used before, you're using 3% now?
For the first year of the bans.
For the first year bans. Okay, and what's coming from the fund balance?
600 and, I don't want to quote it wrong. I believe it's 680,000.
All right, is that on a page in here, or did I just miss it?
Yes, I went too far.
Okay.
So fund balance applied is proposed at 682,735 on page 30.
All right, page 30, okay. All right, so that's what keeps us down under the 4%, down to the 3 area. All right. So 3%, that worked out, so you were being very conservative with the 3.5 before.
We're still using that for when the bond gets issued in 2028.
Okay, you're still using it, all right. I know the question was asked back in the town council days when I was on there. the town council stepped to the plate when we needed $500,000 when we opened Broad Rock School. You know, I know Kate asked for that earlier, and I can't tell you the mechanism that we used, that the school committee used, and I was on the town council then, and I don't know what the mechanism used, but the town came up with $500,000 of extra money that they needed for the transfer, just lots of things happening. A huge school budget that year of 17.5%, but of that, $500,000 was a request from the town council. And it came during that May financial meeting period, so I can't tell you what came first. But when they got in trouble, we gave them the $500,000. And I don't know if it came out of a fund balance from the town. I don't know how it came from. Maybe you could find out, but there seemed to be no questions on the ability to do that, ask the town council, even after the financial town meeting approved the budget. So
Jim,
anyway, that was a long time ago.
was that for the Broad Rock project, or was it for the budget?
Well, the combination Broad Rock was thrown in there because we
Okay.
had a number of options that were given for the personnel, and that was back and forth constantly. You know, how many grades do you put into one school? And it was really a
Yeah.
mess, and believe me, I'll never know how to catch up with it. All I can tell you is when you start off 20 years ago with a 17.5% budget, then the next 3 years were 10, 9, and 8. You can understand why 20 years later, we wound up with budgets that nobody's happy with.
Yeah.
Anyway, just a couple more questions. Let's see. I'm going to bring up again, I brought this up at the last town council meeting, not the other night, but a couple of weeks ago. You know, all the comments in the newspaper on regionalization, and you know, I think, you know, it's nice that we all said that, you know, Narragansett has no interest in merging or any kind of alliance with South Kingstown. Yet, my understanding is the state of Rhode Island dictates that we don't have any rights to make that decision. Matter of fact, education is the only thing that I thought the state has control of statewide, and not like zoning or land use, which the Homestead Acts give communities the right to. So, you know, a lot of people always say you know, we don't want to be with you guys, but we're going to get at the point here with these budgets coming up over the next few years that we've got to consider this. And we've already done all the homework on this school. My gosh, you know, your economies of scale now for a little bit more steel and cement. I don't know why for 250 kids that RIDE, frankly, hasn't come down and said, you're going to do it this way, but we might have the right to ask for 60, 70, 80% of that total bond back. So I don't know why we're not in that position that really RIDE should be able to tell us what to do at this point. I'd rather wait another year and have the dual combination. Narragansett would be happy. They wouldn't have to finance a new high school. And maybe we'd get a whole lot of money paid for, but the state would be happy, RIDE would be happy, maybe save our taxpayers millions, tens of millions of bond cost dollars if we could merge these schools. But I thought, as I said tonight, 2 weeks ago, I thought the places would be packed with all the letters to the editor or the newspaper articles by Mr. Seymour, and it's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Honestly, yeah, we've got to have this discussion sometime open. Somehow this has got to happen. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
You're asking for a conversation with Narragansett, Jim? Is that what you're saying? You want that? You're asking us to do that? Are you asking us to organize it? Is a conversation on regionalization?
Well, I certainly would hope when things slow down here in May, June, that, but we've got to talk about this. I thought Middletown and Newport were considered a potential regionalization a few years ago, but they were really equal school districts. But when you look at the population of Narragansett here, gosh, they'll be down to about 70 kids in the high school years, so maybe 250, 280 kids. And our 725, which have been brought up, there's room in there. Mm-hmm. So this makes no sense, that RIDE isn't all over this. And since the high school is located at least on the Narragansett side of our geography here, it certainly makes sense. But I really wish we'd get at it. You know, we can't have the newspapers bring this up all the time, and a few of us, and not address the issue. At some point, it's going to have to happen. All right, thank you again.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, Mike Agus, Cardinal Lane, South Kingstown. I just wanted to go over the concept of a project management office. I've noticed that we've got a lot of projects going on in this town all the time. You know, what would be good would be to develop some best practices in project management and then spread those throughout the town and standardize on that to increase schedule and cost and performance. Okay, so that's kind of what I was talking about. So even a geek can have a sense of humor. So I said, hey, South Kingstown, have you got PMO? You know, like got milk? You know, got PMO. So PMO stands for Project Management Office. We professionals like to have our own jargon so that nobody else knows what we're talking about. But seriously, you all know what project management is. I love these charts here, but it's about controlling time and cost and scope. I'm trying to remember the old adage: you can tell them when, you can tell them how much, but can't tell them what, or any one of them, right? You're always trying to balance those three things. There's a project management body of knowledge, a PMBOK. I told you we like those acronyms. And there's actually a Project Management Institute, and the Project Management Institute actually has a certification called a PMP, a Project Management Professional. So what I'm proposing is that we find a few people in our staff that are managing projects, and then you've got them all over the place. The Highway Department has to be doing this. The Recreation Department, they open the town beach somehow every year, must be doing project management. And get them some training and get them some software and start formalizing the way that we manage projects. At some point, you could engage somebody from URI or a paid. You could pay them too, but you could find a paid consultant, and they could come in and help you establish a project management office. And all that is standardizing the way that you manage projects. If they're standardized, they can all be summed up, and you can look at all the projects at the same time, right, and see which ones are behind, which ones are okay from a schedule standpoint, which ones are overrunning in cost, and start seeing, well, what practices are not being followed by some and are being followed by others, and that's the way you lift up the performance. So again, basically wanted to just tell you that the good things that you get out of this are scope management, and you know about this, and change management. If you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, you want to know that you're doing that, and you want to make good decisions based on numbers and time management. Communication management is what kind of prompted me to think about this here. It's really difficult to find out what's going on in the town at times. Jim, meaning no offense, but nobody knew about the South Road School meeting, okay? if they didn't find it out through a committee member, okay, and then that's how it happened. All the abutters up in Taft Hill had no idea that that meeting was going to happen. So somehow we should be able to communicate better, and one of the big things about communication, about project management, is communication. Chris, over on the school committee there, is a consummate project manager, all right, and he is following best practices. I get an email from him every week, and he tells me what's going on at the school committee, what meetings are they having, when are they meeting with the abutters, what were the decisions made, etc. And so he's constantly communicating, and so I know what's going on there. I don't have to lift a finger, and it's simply just an email. So those are the kind of things that prompted me to make this recommendation. And so you can flip it over, you can see what project management versus a PMO. So you're having a project manager, they're going about their business, they're doing their project. Well, in the case of the project management office, it's basically just a meeting and some information and some training and things like that you use so that all project managers get together once a week and they compare notes and they report in, and that's how you get oversight. So I just wanted to point this out and see if that's something that we can consider and include in the budget going forward.
All right, thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Jim, you want to talk a little bit about the position of executive assistant / communications manager there? I think some of that would address what Mike is, providing us here.
Sure. So communication is always the first thing you need to improve on, no matter where you are. It doesn't matter what occupation, whatever. The thing is, South Road School, I have mixed feelings on that, to be quite honest with you, just to answer your question. And the reason is, I agree that it should have been communicated better. But the bottom line, that was the most record number of people I've ever seen turn out in the 3 years I've been here, anywhere, anytime. So we must have done something right to get 150 people in a room. But I do agree with you that, and several council members have brought it up, that, that we've had some lapses in communication. That was about 6-8 months ago. We've made some serious corrective action in that, and Colleen's been doing a really good job with that, but we still have room for improvement. So therefore, we were going to hire a communications expert we were going to hire a grant writer and project manager. These are all things great idea, but we were talking about $750,000 a year to do it. So, we had to scale back due to the debt and everything else going on. It's just the way it is, do more with less. But, so where are we now? The position that Colleen is vacating on Thursday has changed a lot in 35 years. Where it was more administrative, there was a lot of paper, there was a lot of stuff that we didn't even anticipate now, of course, social media. So we are advertising, and we're getting a record number of applicants. So far in 2 days, we've got 32 applicants for this. And half of the job, maybe 60% of the job is going to be communications. It's going to be about not only keeping the residents well-informed as to what's going on, but the council. And self-admittedly, there were some lapses, and it's on my shoulders. I'm the town manager, so that's the way it is. But that is something. They're all good ideas, Mike. I don't want to discourage you. Everything you've said is a good idea, great idea. It's just that it comes at a cost, and now is the time that we need to do more with less. And I think we got a pretty good plan moving forward for this. But thank you for the suggestion.
Sure. I'm glad to hear that. You got to spend money to make money too, though, and this would be an investment. And I'm just suggesting that maybe we just try to absorb this and make an effort to identify some best practices in project management and get them to maybe have a meeting on it and talk about the process and what they're doing, and see if there's any recommendations for how you might share the wealth and improve things across the board. You could kind of bootstrap this too. That's all.
Yeah, no, there was one part I didn't answer your question on. So we do have project managers that we've hired as consultants, which, as expensive as they are, they're still less than full-time employees. We have several projects. The Community Learning Center, that is going to be nearly a $4 million project. We have a project manager on that. We even have, for the paving project at the senior services, we have a project manager on that as well. The EMS station, project manager on that. And so it's not that we've looked the other way towards project managers, it's that we did not take on the full-time employee of a project manager.
That's fine, but so I would take those best practices that you're gleaning from all these different project managers and try to, there must be somebody already doing this, just try to pick it up and put it onto one of the projects of your staff, right? And see if they can start to pick up some of these project management skills, give them some training, give them some software, and you could bootstrap this up and you could get some help and get going. And I'm glad to help any way
Mike,
that I can.
I just want to follow up on what Jim said, and I agree with him. We can always do better. I think there's a consensus on the council from our earlier budget discussions that you're on the right track. I had actually proposed the communications manager position be added, but given the fiscal realities, we're looking to make that a combined position, and we're relying on paid consultants. But I do like the idea that you mentioned about the software and the cross-training. We can follow up on that. And to a certain extent, we're stuck with one of the basic things about government is it winds up being an incremental thing because you can't jump and do 10 things all at once. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Can I speak to that real quick? I would like to thank you for bringing it up because what's being lost is what he's asking for or suggesting is a project management office, and it's distinctly different than a communications manager. It's distinctly different than a single project manager on a project, like Chris Spiegel. His whole company are project managers. And yes, on certain projects, when they hit a certain number, we're required to have project managers on them. But there's incredible certification and time, and I speak from personal experience, living in the corporate world for as many years as I did with my husband, is a certified project manager himself. It's a very expensive role. It's a very expensive trainings. It's not just like, hey Jim, let's get you some software, here's a little PD. It's an actual career, and their entire offices in corporations and in government that run them. So I truly appreciate what you're bringing to the table because you're so spot on and correct. That said, we know our fiscal limitations being in local government, but I just want to make sure we're not kind of belittling the role because it's a huge role, and I know you're not intentionally. I just want to make sure it's understood that what he's asking for isn't a administrative assistant who's also a communications manager. They're very important people in large organizations, and they have particular certifications and skill sets. And I just wanted to kind of put that out there because we have a lot of them in our community, and if any of them are listening, I just want to make sure they understand that what he's asking for is a little bit different than what we've kind of proposed.
One other point. So let's talk about reality. I was on a Zoom call today with Congressman Magazzini's office. So these grants, earmarks, everything are shrinking or disappearing. And that's a fact. Even some of the existing stuff we have could possibly not get funded. So as far as the past few years, we've been very lucky with getting some tremendous amount of influx of money to do these projects, which we never could have afforded, the EMS building, the community learning center, go on and on, the boat ramp, the whole thing. That's drying up. And that was a reality to all the town managers who were on that call today. So, but no, we're not, I would respectfully disagree. We're not minimizing this at all. We get it. And that's a very good point. Matter of fact, Mike, I think we take volunteers. I think you could really fit in here very well. No, we do appreciate it, and we hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mike. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak?
Brett Harrington, Wakefield. I just want to reiterate, yes, I would like the council to approach Narragansett on the regionalization. I also would like to know how we could get our representatives, I'm probably saying her name wrong, Grew and McEntee and Spear and Fogarty, as a town hall in front of us, and to find out what their efforts are to get this town more money from the feds, from the state, as you guys are talking tonight about how little we get. I would appreciate hearing that from them as opposed to hearing, I hope that I learned my lesson when we put a referendum forward, or I have a duty to pass a school bond. Anyway, we have a crisis in this country. The birth rate is dropping, and that's a huge problem. I respect the town manager. He runs a tight ship here, very transparent. The $803,640 that was added to the schools, is that a one-time, or if you guys decided next year that you were going to level fund, is that added into that, or would that be the number that was, before that was given to the school department?
That amount is approximately $660,000. Can you speak on that, Brian?
So I reached out to the Mark Dunham at RIDE, who regarding, and this is the operating transfer in of the $608,000 from the Healthcare Management Fund at the bottom of page 40. He consulted the Auditor General, and they came back middle of last week, maybe the end of last week, that it is considered a one-time revenue source. It's coming from a non-operating revenue of the town. It's a side fund, and it is not considered an increase in maintenance of effort. So it is a one-time. And the other side of this is the fund balance of this healthcare management fund would effectively be zero then. So it's not a recurring revenue.
Okay, because when I read the article in the Independent, as they were referring to earlier, I knew that was going to come with, well, what if we need more money? When I was reading that article, that was the interpretation I came out of that. So, and we heard that tonight. So back to what I first said, is there a way that you guys, because these reps are not going to return my call, is there a way that you could facilitate a meeting with these reps?
In the past, there have been meetings where they've been invited and they
We typically do it annually.
We haven't done it in a long time.
Yeah, it does not appear we've done it. We should do it after their session. They're not going to have time to meet before the session ends this term, but I mean, we should get back on at least an annual basis.
Yeah, because I'm not looking for Zoom. I'm looking for in-person.
We can organize a meeting. I think we would. I think it seems very reasonable, right?
It would be very, it's just a matter of getting the right night.
They will finish in June, like June 30th, and so, not that we're just deciding it based on you, but I feel like July and August, people are doing, it's so hard to corral people because they're doing summer in South County with friends and family, and it's the weather, so maybe we could do it early fall. Does it make sense?
It's got to be around the time that they begin session, so it's all fresh. What are they going to do?
No, before, Rory, before.
No, I think early in session, around January-ish.
No, with all due respect, then we get into the budget and we get into all these meetings, and I would rather do it in the fall when we can say, these are some of the priorities. Can you help advance some of these priorities? Like we just did the transportation resolution, but we need them to go into that's not going to happen in this session, so we need to.
I feel like we could pull it together though, like before the end of the session, because, for instance, we were able to get all of the reps in for the community meeting regarding the power company. And so that was really at the last minute because Rep. Fogarty asked me about the location. We had a town council meeting that night, but the town manager was able to pull that meeting together a few weeks ago on a Monday because they're not in session. And what I have heard is that I've heard from the reps, especially about that transportation bill and other ones, that this is the year that we need to really make a concerted effort to have our voices heard. So with that being said, I feel like we could get everybody here on a Monday night before June.
So you're saying like in the next 12, 6, 7 weeks, we could do it on a Monday?
I think we could.
Well,
I bet we could.
I want to comment here quick. I think a lot of this is revolved around timing and strategy. At this point, most of the bills are in the State House. Now, if we want to get to a planning perspective of what's going to happen in the upcoming session, I think it makes sense to meet January when things are like just starting. They're not doing much. They're meeting once or twice a week, if that. They don't really start to meet 3-4 times a week until April-ish. Now we're in that time. It's too late to kind of be like, what are you going to do for us? They can talk about what's pending, what bills are in, maybe predict what the outcome's going to be. But if we really want to, say you need to make a concerted effort as to what we need as a town, I think it makes sense to meet around January. That's when session starts. Things heat up from there. That's my opinion.
Well, that's fine. I'm just looking for this meeting because, we have these reps and there are elected officials and, I personally don't see them doing what they do for me, but this is something that they can do for the taxpayers and say, hey, look, all of the people in the room here tonight, and it is pathetic for anybody listening to this. We hear about how disproportional the money that we get versus other towns. We hear we're a coastal town, we're a rich town, we're this, that. This is the stuff I want to bring in front of these reps and say, hey, look, I need you to go out there and do something for me, not tell me that you hoped I learned my lesson on something. So,
if I may, because I haven't spoken yet, Brett, I think it's a good idea that we meet with the state representatives. Like Councilwoman Alley said, I think that they would be willing to meet. They were willing to meet with the Rhode Island Energy the other day. I think we have a good contact with our council president, with at least one of the state representatives. And honestly, as we all know, the state representatives and senators, I think they'd be very willing to meet with us. And I think that us reaching out to them and saying, hey, we would like to meet up in the next 6 months or so, because we have constituents asking us, I think they'll be good to go with that, Brett.
All right. Well, I hope you're right. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brett.
There are some really exciting bills right now being discussed by a lot of our reps, and I feel that, like, for instance, the primary care bill to increase training for primary care physicians, that Rep Fogarty put in. There's so many good ones that maybe we could put out a request for people to send.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't try to do 2? Because
certainly.
I hear what you're saying about January, and I think you're probably spot on with January, Rory, but I wonder but that's 9 or 10 months away, and wondering if the fall would be like a gentler startup and people could build connections and, it doesn't have to be a big time, but it could be like an hour of our meeting or a special Monday. Because I feel like it's too long. 10 months feels too long.
Yep.
Also, we'll know a lot more about what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And maybe there will be some changes, for instance, to the CTE requirements so that we will, be able to recoup some of that. So there's a lot of spoons in the broth.
Go ahead, Jim.
So I think the residents need to hear exactly what's been done, and so they can, I'll say in plain English, and so that we are trying, and we're trying. You can't try any harder than we are right now. No, and I'm not saying it, but I've met with the governor personally. There were 18 town managers. I was the first one to speak. I said, the funding formula for the town of South Kingston does not work. Exactly. I was very clear.
Exactly.
Then I met with one of his staff members. I said, the funding formula for transportation is broken. We're getting, I can't say the word that I want to say. All right. I met with, about 3 weeks ago, I was at a League of Cities and Towns, which is very active in this. They're trying really hard to fix this. And I was the first one to speak to Commissioner Angelica Infante Green, told the CTE program is broken, and that the town of South Kingston is hemorrhaging money because over 200 of our kids are leaving at a cost of about $6 million a year, and the system isn't working the way it was intended to work. That it's not about children going to other districts to get a program they can't get in South Kingston. They're going there for sports, they're going there for friends. We all know it. I mean, I spoke in plain English. I met with reps who are very on board with this and feel the frustration. And that is something I do agree, we got to get a meeting together with the reps and senators in this room. I've met with the League of Cities and Towns. Once again, I was the first one to talk on it, because we're the ones getting hammered by this. We're the ones that is getting mostly affected by this. It's not fair. It's not fair to this town. I met with Narragansett twice. Once several years ago, and once about 2 months ago. It cannot be any clearer than the email that I received. Let me make it clear, it said, by a town council member there. Town of Narragansett is not interested in regionalizing or merging with South Kingstown. That's their choice. It could not be any clearer. It's not because it wasn't asked. It was asked. To merge or regionalize a system is not as simple as sign on the dotted line. I mean, it's going to take 2 town councils figuring this out, who's going to pay, how they're going to pay, and then it falls down to the people. Has to go to the residents of both towns. Do they want to do it? So I understand, I hear the frustration, but it's not from a lack of trying. We're not getting this done. I mean, it could not be any plainer than the way I'm speaking to our high elected officials in our neighboring towns. The other thing is, we're not alone. When I go to the League of Cities and Towns, I actually sit there, and it's like you're sitting with other town managers and mayors that are all having the same problems. Wesley's having the same exact problem. Wesley is almost a mirror to us. They've lost half their population in the time frame that we have because it's a coastal community. We're not going to give up. We're going to keep moving forward. And I just want you to have the assurance that we're trying, and we're trying hard. And the council knows about all the efforts, and they are directing me for a lot of these conversations I'm making with these other people.
One additional point I want to make, the discussion when we talk about regionalization, and I tried to make this point to Mr. Seymour, there are other things besides consolidating 2 school systems into one. We could have cooperative agreements that don't necessarily get controlled by RIDE the way a full regionalization would. But they're not interested in that either, at least from the discussions that I've had.
All right. Go ahead, Carol.
I just want to thank Jim for all the work he's doing on this, but also just as a reminder, we're probably the only school district with 2 charter schools right in our own backyard. So the CTE hits us at that high school level, but these charter schools take all our kids at that middle.
That was the other point I forgot to mention. It was on the list. Charter schools, another
Yes.
thing that's crushing us.
Yes, we do. So thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Michelle, go ahead.
I didn't look up the numbers because I didn't anticipate the discussion, but as I recall, when some of the districts, back in the dark ages when we were still using tablets, when some of the districts were regionalizing, the state gave bonuses to those districts for regionalizing. It's been sometime in the last 8 to 10 years that those bonuses have been taken away. They don't give them anymore for regional districts. And I have to look up the details of that because I didn't think we would be talking about that tonight, so I didn't look that up before I came. The other thing the point I want to make with regard to the charter schools, and I think everybody in town knows I'm an educator, so the whole point in charter schools originally was to provide alternatives for youngsters who were attending failing schools. So that leaves us with the question, why do we have 2 charter schools located in amongst a big circle of high-performing districts, not just our district, but other neighboring districts? It defeats, it takes away the whole definition and what was supposed to be for the formation of charter schools.
Thank you, Michelle. Stuart, go ahead.
So This is very interesting conversations. I too want to say thank you for what you're doing behind the scenes. I know you said we don't see eye to eye, but on a lot of that stuff, I see eye to eye with you. But
He has. He's just jealous of your hair. He's just jealous of your hair, Stuart. He's jealous.
in any case, I think we can all appreciate much of the conversation that's going on at this point, especially when we look at the level of frustration that we have as a nation, hearing the types of news that we hear that ultimately affect not just across federal lines, but also across state lines and ultimately down to the local level where we sit today. And we can feel helpless sometimes. And I'm not telling anybody what to do, but I do know that taking control of the things we can control and really focusing on the things that are important, and by doing something with that, wherever it is that you feel that you've taken control of something. One of the things I know that I do, and I've certainly implored my wife to do, and she's taken that on as well, is just to write to your congressmen, write to your senators, call them every day. When you have that notion of, oh my God, what the heck is going on? They're not listening. They don't hear us. It's the old adage, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And we have energy issues on that as well, but that's a whole different story. But taking control of your feelings and how you feel helpless by doing something has really a positive impact, not just for yourself and your own well-being, but also for the reps to hear the things that we're all passionate about here in our town, not just from our town manager, not just from our town council, but from the constituents, because we do matter and we can make a difference. And even if we look back a couple of weeks ago when the resistance group came out and organized a protest, that was happening nationwide, there was, I don't know how many thousand people were there, but people felt good about being together and doing something. Did it make a difference? Probably not yet. Do we hope that it will? Yeah, I do. So that's my soapbox for now. But
Thank you, Stuart.
That really is, I thank you. That's beautifully said. And I agree and have reaped those same benefits in my life. So thank you for saying that.
Go ahead.
Just quick, last night we passed our resolution on the transportation funding formula inequities. If we could get any help from your amazing marketing person to put the resolution out when it comes out and to give some instructions to families on how to call to advocate to the reps. Patty also had a list of 13 members on the transportation committee. I think if we could get the community, we had 75 people here, lobbying for funding to the budget. That's something that people can do, and it dovetails with what you're talking about. Is like who to call. So if we could just partner on that, I'm just hoping if 10 people make 10 calls, it would be 10 more calls than they ever expected on that topic, especially, and it doesn't cost anything. So how do we do that? That's all.
Well, actually, I have the document where everybody's name is on, and I'm going to put together that email list and give it to Nicole so that it can be put out, but then I'm going to put it on, I'll send it to
Right.
everybody.
But they have the listserv, they have the district newsletter.
I can send them that, I'll send you that
Yeah.
email as well.
Who's your
Put
good
it out
person doing
online.
that? Eric? Oh. Give him a
Great.
good job.
Great.
And
Jay, go
ask
ahead.
him if he wants to apply to the Executive Assistant Director of
No,
Communications
he's
for
All
the
right, all
town
right.
manager.
Hold on, let's get back.
Can we get that resolution forwarded to us for our
Yes.
next school committee meeting, please?
I believe you
Yeah,
guys are
already
working
talked to
on
the
a,
superintendent about sending it over
Thank
once
you.
everything's finalized.
Yeah.
I believe you guys are working on a potential resolution addressing CTE as well. We'd like to get a copy of that once that is passed, so we can pass up mirroring one. Jay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've already said this in the past, but I just want to give kudos to the school district and our town staff for working diligently on this, and all of the members of the public for coming out tonight for these hearings. I know Brett, Brett always comes out. And Jim. So what I wanted to reiterate tonight, and because I think this is a good budget, and I think we should be proud of this, next year we're going to have a harder budget, right? And I'm encouraging the school district, the superintendent, to work with our school district or our school department, or excuse me, our school board, to work with our town to try to build those places where we can consolidate and save money. And we heard the feedback from Narragansett, no, we don't want to regionalize. Okay, are there more places for shared services that we can look at for the 25-26 school year, that we can try to lower the levy for our taxpayers? Because like we say again and again up here, the most important part of our job is fiscal responsibility for our taxpayers. We all want to continue to invest in our high school. We want to invest in the programmatic parts of our amazing school district. We want to make sure that the needs of our students are being met, because every year, especially since the pandemic, there are growing needs. But this summer, this fall, this is the time to start having those conversations. Let us not be the grasshopper. Let us be the ant. Let us prepare for next year's tough budget. The following year is going to be tough too. So let's get this together. I think we have a good budget to be proud of, but winter is coming, not to quote the TV show, and I think that good collaboration and good communication across the board is going to be a way to lower cost for us and to build maybe a branch over into Narragansett where we could save some money by sharing some services, additional services. Thank you.
All right. We still are in a public hearing phase. Come on up. Oh, if you could just turn on the...
My name is Sarah Schofield, and I live in Saunderstown, South Kingstown. And first of all, I'm not an actress, and nobody paid me to come tonight. Secondly, I do have a question. Did anybody here go to school? You give me a thumbs up. It's the teacher in me. You guys went to school? Okay. So schools are really important to me. I've been an educator for a quarter of a century. I can't believe I can say that. And I'm really just here to thank you for looking out for our kids as much as you can. It's going to be a fight. We have a lot going on federally and in our state and what have you. What I'd like you to work on is the morale. Kids are not necessarily leaving for sports. I do think our town's been squeezed by the public lately. Recent years, it seems calmer. As we've noticed, the room isn't as full. So what I would like to do is say, please continue to fight for our kids. I think your number one mission is the kids at all times. That's our future. That's our future taxpayers. Keep in mind, please, that undereducated populations have higher crime. They have higher poverty. There's the preschool to prison pipeline is a real researched, bona fide thing. So please invest not only money in our kids, but morale. I think our teachers need support, our families need support, birth rates are declining. If I were that age right now, which I'm not, I would think twice before putting a child on this earth. So I just wanted to say thank you for your time that you all give and have given for years, some of you. And know that we're here and you're going to be up against some hard times. And if you can be tough, we'll be tough behind you, but know that we're going to be here. We are paying attention. Thanks.
Could I
Thank
ask
you.
you a question? Yeah. Just forgive me. What part of Saunderstown is in South Kingstown?
What do you mean?
Saunderstown is
It's
North
the-
Kingstown and Narragansett, so what part of South Kingstown is in Saunderstown?
It's the South Kingstown part of Saunderstown. Near my house.
Near your house?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
one,
us.
Sarah.
Yeah, you bet. I
All
was
right.
born in South County Hospital.
I believe you.
Yeah, no, been here a long time. So yeah, it's the South Kingstown part. Look it up.
You're gonna have
I
to
did.
go.
If you look on- if you
You're
look it
going
up.
on an adventure this weekend. That's what you're doing.
All right.
All right, thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? All right, I want to leave you with a cliffhanger, sort of a thought here we can maybe address next meeting. Is there a way by which we can enter into agreements with outside of SK districts by which we could cap the amount that we provide them in monies for a student who elects to go to that district? I believe there are agreements in effect in other towns that have these, added district situations. We don't have to get into it now, but I'd like to potentially address it at next meeting, if you could look into that.
Wow, good one. Another good one.
Yeah,
Really good,
that
Rory.
was a good one.
You had these like little, the
All right,
transportation one?
we're gonna end it there. Great job.